It is March 12th, 2021, lesson 132. I lose the world from all I thought it was. So when you take the consideration that this life is a dream, right, that you're awakening from it, then you start to understand what is the potential that you have within this realm. Okay? So yesterday we were talking about awakening and how some people are ready, some people are not. So you actually have the ability to choose to change your mind. Okay? You can choose to change your mind just like you can choose to change your mind now. Just like when you're dreaming, you can choose to change your mind about what kind of dream you actually want to have. Now, that's always going to depend on how aware are you as you're going into this dream, okay? Because sometimes it's a trigger that wakes us up, especially if you are familiar with lucid dreaming. You have that ability to, write an X on your hand or look in the mirror and you're like, wow, that's not what I look like. I look a lot more beautiful than that. And when you take in consideration that sometimes it's sudden and sometimes it's gradually, then you start to see why living your life as a prayer is very important. Okay? So you mentioned the idea that you don't live your life, life lives you. Okay? And it's like the same idea of, it's not my will but thy will. It's the Father that worketh through me. It is the universe that is within me. I am part of the universe. So when we take in consideration what that looks like, right? Now you are combining the stress of life with the energy that you're matching it with, right? So you have to meet life halfway so you can experience reality the way that reality is trying to experience you. And the only way that actually works is by choosing. Okay, so you must choose to see things differently, right? Everything that you thought and held to be true are going to change completely because that doesn't exist anymore. Okay? Because just like when there is something that, may ruin your perception of someone or let's do this one. What is it? Okay. Right. You are trying to figure out what is the most important thing to you, right? So you have to see the relationship that you have with yourself, because if everything is a reflection of who you are, then you're starting to understand, okay, how did I create this? Okay? If people are disappointing you, why is there an expectation? This is making it a lot better. I don't know. Anyways, why is that so painful for you, right? Why are you holding on so much? Why is there an attachment right there, if that makes sense? So when you look at these moments that people are having, these sudden enlightenments, if you want to call it, you have to see that not everybody has to go through the same shit, right? Everybody's going to be different. And sometimes people are just going to live their lives and not change anything, okay? The only thing that changes is the how, okay? So when we look at these levels of understanding of ourselves, right? We start with the environments, our when and where, and then our actions and behaviors, what we're doing, our skills and capabilities, how we're doing things, our why, which is our values and beliefs, the things that we hold true, and then our identity, which is who. We start to see where does that fall within our own understanding of ourselves, okay? So when we focus on the how and not the what, that's when we are enriching the quality of life, right? Because you're focused on your skills. So you're meeting life halfway, okay? So something that I learned from Eckhart Tolle was that there are 3 awakened doings, okay? And that is acceptance, enjoyment and enthusiasm. Okay, so acceptance is basically you're surrendering to the process. If you're in a situation, you either surrender, accept fully, you get yourself out of the situation, or you do something about it, right? You're taking right action to deal with the situation in hand. Enjoyment is seeing how you can bring joy within the scope of yourself, okay? Because as you are reflecting yourself out in the world, that's how the world is going to interpret you, right? You are putting on some sunglasses, some lenses, and that allows you to enrich in the quality as well, right? Just by the heart vibration, if you want to call it that, we have an electromagnetic wave that emanates when we have love. So just by being loving towards people, people are going to be loving towards you, right? There's a science behind it. It's not just spirituality. And then, of course, when we look at the other aspects of enjoyment, it doesn't come from what we're doing, right? It's like immersing ourselves in the entire moment, right? So when we have focuses, we have like a narrow focus, an objective focus, right? So we have front when we're reading, when we're fighting, when we are doing something very important, we have that narrow focus. And then we have an immersed where we're feeling everything, and we have a diffused option to that. So it's like a little Punnett square, if you want to call it that, right? So when we are immersed, reading, let's just say that we're watching a movie, but we're not really into it, right? So that's a narrow diffused. Then when we're into it, it's almost like sex. It's almost like a massage, right? We're so into it, we feel the sensations. Then we have the objective, right? So we're taking ourselves out of the equation, right? And we're seeing things from a third-person perspective, from the witness, if you want to call it that. And then we can hear in the background the diffuse like music. And then on the other side, where we're kind of just observing our emotions and we're immersed into it, it's like meditation. Okay, so we have different ways to focus our consciousness as we're going through the process. And again, it's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. So once we put attention, wherever attention goes, energy flows. Okay, so the final part is the enthusiasm, right? So from the Greek root of it is, theos, and enthused is being possessed by a god, if you want to call it that, right? So when we have enthusiasm, it's contagious. When we have the idea of charisma, right, it's God's gift. It's the gift of the Holy Spirit. So we see that our energy contaminates, right, if we're in these negative vibrations, if you want to call it that. And that's only because we're forcing ourselves to see things differently, right? You have to choose to see things differently. Because when we look at the enjoyment, right, and we have that element of goal or vision, when we have the ability to go beyond our identity and have something beyond ourselves, when we have a vision, when we have a purpose, that's what's going to orient us, right? And we have this structural tension. So life is tension, right? There's sexual tension that creates this, polarity between you and the woman, or vice versa, or whatever partner you have. There is tension within life. There's tension going to the gym, right? Tension is what makes everything grow. If you're not feeling tension, then you're not growing, right? And if you don't have a good relationship with tension, then you're resisting, right? You're not in acceptance and you're not enjoying, which means that you're not enthusiastic about your life. So when you go through that process, that you're, trying to get to a goal and you're more focused on the goal, where you're, goal oriented, that's when the ego starts coming in. Okay, so we look at that, and when we feel stress, that's when the egos come in, right? So the ability to be enthusiastic and the ego cannot coexist. It's not possible, because you cannot give your full attention to something and resist it at the same time, right? You can't fully be immersed in sex while thinking about something, like your bills or someone else or whatever, right? Like, women will feel that, right? From my perspective and what I've experienced as well. So basically, you're cutting yourself off from that creative power, that universe. That strain and wanting creates the struggle. Okay, so everything is supposed to be at ease, and of course you're supposed to meet the challenge with the amount of skill. right? So if you're pushing yourself too further, that's because you're going beyond your learning zone and going into your anxiety zone. Or if you're just, not doing anything, is because you're in your comfort zone. So you got to have a balance between the two, right? You got to know where your limitations are. And it's only a limitation if you choose to see it like that. You can see it as an ability to learn even further, okay? So being able to pair up with the activities that are part of fulfilling a goal or purpose is what enthusiasm is. So we're choosing, right, to be fulfilled within everything that we do. So that's why they say it's better to live a life of virtue, because even if we didn't have anything beyond this, you'll be very self-fulfilled, right? So those that you can never fail trying to seek the reality of truth, okay? So it always is going to show up in some way, somehow, whether it's in children, whether it's in our siblings, parents, our loved ones. It's going to show up in everything that we do, right? So again, we're changing the quality of how we're doing it, right? Because again, the drastic change is not necessary for everybody, right? Some people will go through these crazy exponential growth that they didn't choose, right? Not everybody has to go through that. Not everybody has to go through that same process. You just have to be aware, right? Be present with your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions, right? And then know when to let go, right? And that takes a lot of discipline to be okay with the fact that you are the cause of your own pain. So once you choose to see things differently, then life will meet your reality. Now, if you have some hesitation, then there's going to be some hesitation out in the world. This is your dream. You're waking up from it. And I'm telling you that you have full control once you let go of control. It is only when we release the control for our will, for our life, for it to be an experiment, if you want to call it that, the more that we let go, the more life is going to show up, the more synchronicities are going to happen, right? That you made the right decision, that you weren't supposed to take that flight, that you weren't supposed to go, whatever it is, it's going to show, right? And it confirms because you are now interacting with the field. You're interacting with this video game, if you want to call it that, and like the little thought bubbles are showing up and they're like, oh, hey, Brian achieved this, or like he understood, or he unlocked this new ability or this new understanding. And you're like, yes, I did make the right decision, right? Because it's very difficult for us to actually see ourselves always in the highest light, right? Why? Because we're always learning from our failures, right? It's the one thing that has kept us safe for so long. So that's pride, right? Pride is that which is the last front tier, right? The last front tier is the last barrier that we have to cross for us to come into a loving place within ourselves, right? Because when you have pride, it's going to show every single time. It's going to leak every single time. And that's why you pain so much, because you think you're special, you're individual. Yeah, that. So once you start looking at yourself as everybody else, that you see God in everything, everywhere, anytime, then you start to see, okay, that's the divinity that I am allowing people to actually resonate with, because that is also within me. Okay, that's the enthusiasm that you're giving people. That's contagious, because you are now being possessed by God. So, peace.